Titleist just released 3 new drivers, so I'm gonna let you know which one of these drivers might be best for you. Now, it's been 2 years since Titleist released a new driver, so I'll let you know everything that's changed, what's new and improved, and I'll give you my overall first impressions of this new GT lineup. Let's go. Let's just get right into hitting them. So this driver I'm gonna hit first is the Titleist GT2. The GT2 is their most forgiving driver. It's also built for distance. So let's give it a couple hits and I'll let you know what I think. For my first hit, that was a little miss hit. It was definitely kind of on the toe, but for a miss hit to still carry 297, we're off to a good start here. I felt better. Spin came way down. So already between my first and my second strike, first hit was more of a miss hit. To catch it more on the screws and to see the spin come way down, that was a lot better. That felt good. So visually, not much has changed, I think, from the TSR. If you're familiar with the Titleist lineup, they're very clean lines. They're not gonna throw anything crazy and loud out at you. The top is still a gloss finish. What has changed is they have that little GT logo to help line the ball up. The face, right on the face, it's almost like a field goal. There's 2 lines that help me really center the ball. They're subtle, but I think it's still like a 3D etched. It's not a milled face. Visually, you know, I'm not super impressed with it, but it's really clean. So if you like a clean looking driver, I think you'll still like looking at this GT. So what's changed between the TSR and the GT? In the new GT lineup, they have now a seamless Therafoam crown, meaning it's no longer a full titanium design. The new material that they've added is a proprietary matrix polymer. Someone say matrix? Ah, my back. Basically, the matrix polymer is a lighter material that they're able to play around with the weight distribution just to help you guys hit it further and straighter. Kind of same story, different material. For all these drivers I'm testing, I'm using the same shaft. This is a hazardous black. It's a 70 gram extra stiff. This is the new hazardous, so I think it's Gen 5 now. Is that right, Gen 5? I think the shaft looks really good. It's a nice stock option. In my opinion, it's one of the best stock option shafts that you can get. And the price point for these GT drivers are coming in at $899 Canadian or about $650 USD. And they do also offer a premium shaft upgrade. That would be your Ventuses, the Tour ADs. That's coming in at $1199 Canadian. That right there is finally my optimal shot shape. I typically hit kind of a high fade. That was right down the line, had a ton of roll. The spin was low. In years past when I've tested Titleist drivers, so the TSI lineup, the TSR lineup, when I hit the 2s being the most forgiving, the highest MOI, typically I find my spin through the roof. That they're usually around for me like 3,500, 3,600, which is not optimal. For me, I want to be around 2,500, 2,400. That was perfect. So knowing that I can get the performance that I want out of their most forgiving driver, to me is super appealing. If any of you guys are new to the channel, if it's your first time here, well, thank you. I appreciate it. My name is Brandon. I run New 9 Golf. I do club reviews just like this one. And if you want to help the channel, please smash subscribe. It helps me get product like this before the public release date so I can test it and give you guys an honest review on how I think it performs. I am impressed with the forgiveness of that. I was kind of like wincing, grinding my teeth, waiting for the shot tracer to show up because I feel like I really pulled that. So even though that was a miss hit, my spin got up a little. I honestly thought I was pulling it in the trees. So from a forgiveness standpoint, I will say that this GT2 is a forgiving driver. I was pretty happy with that. That's 10 hits. Let me go through the data with you guys on the GT2. Okay, so here are all my 10 shots. I had some go left and I had some go right. We'll see if that narrows as I change the heads. And if you guys are watching me in your, let's say you're in your 50s and you don't have the same club head speed that I do, I totally get that my golf game might not be relatable to you guys. But if everything was equal, if I swung as fast as you did, hopefully these results would be the same. So we'll kind of just take the results with a grain of salt. But I just want to be able to show you these drivers and how they perform for me because I think you'll have a similar experience with your swing. I'm gonna go through my numbers right now and I'll give you guys a little bit of insight on data if you're not super familiar with club head data. These are my averages. I was averaging 117 club head speed. For me, that's not the fastest I've ever swung it. I made the mistake of going for a fitness assessment yesterday. I'm a little sore today, so I'm not gonna be breaking any personal records by any means, but 117 is kind of around my average. 172 is actually really good ball speed. I would say I'm averaging around 170, so 172 is actually pretty good. The spin, we talked about spin a lot. In years past, I told you that my spin was north of 3,000 RPM. So for it to be down, even with some miss hits, I really like the spin characteristics of this GT2. I was average carry 302, 330 total. If those sound like absurd numbers, I'll let you know we're filming in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. The elevation is about 3,400 feet. You gain about 4% more carry distance than if you were at sea level. So it's not a huge difference, but just know that the ball goes slightly further up here in Calgary. And let's take a look at my dispersion. So I think the driving range that we picked is I think it's actually the Titleist fitting facility. I didn't realize that the driving range wasn't like 340. So it looks like there's a green here. What I'm looking at is consistent distance. What I don't want in a driver is I don't want one ball down here at 280 and another one up here at 350, because that would be relatively inconsistent. I love looking at this line, seeing that the majority of them are right kind of at the same distance. So from a consistency standpoint, this driver is super consistent. I think with a different shaft, I could narrow that dispersion. Again, this is a stock shaft option. Still pretty good, but let's see how my stats change and the dispersions change with the different heads. The next driver I'll hit is the GT3. I'll let you guys know too that this video is just like my first look, first impression video. I plan to do another video with a Titleist fitting professional where they fit me into one of these GT drivers, but for now it's kind of just my first impressions. Moving on to the GT3, what's changed, what's different? The biggest difference is it has a movable weight system right up against the face that you can change the weight placement for a heel or toe bias. Why would you want to do that? If you hit a slice or a big hook, you can play around with the weight settings to help hit the ball straighter. So the GT2 does not have that, but it is in the GT3. I'm also anticipating this to be more of a player's driver. The spin might come down a little bit, and hopefully I can get a little closer to that center line, so let's find out. Right out of the gate, that was a bomb. If I could do that every time, I'll be on the PGA Tour. No, I wouldn't, because I'd still need good iron play, wedges, putting. So good. I hope you guys can hear how good this GT lineup sounds so far. I was really impressed with the GT2, the GT3 now so far sounds really good. I've always been a huge fan of how Titleist drivers sound. No exceptions here. This thing sounds really good. Now, all these drivers still have the Titleist Fit system that you can play around with the hosel settings. I have all of these drivers on the A1 setting. The weight I also have right on neutral, it's right in the center. So it's interesting to see the flight characteristics of the GT3 now versus the GT2, because I noticed to be more my traditional shot shape, kind of that high fade. There was a toe strike. Let's see how that responds. Pretty good. I'll let you guys know too that we are filming at Modern Golf in Calgary. We're using a TrackMan and a Pro V1 RCT ball. This Pro V1 is built specifically for that TrackMan to give us the best possible data indoors. There, low on the face. We'll see what happens. Spin goes way up. I knew right away that was a miss hit. Typically when you hit it on lower on the face, the spin will kind of go through the roof. That's exactly what happened. Because this is more of like a player's driver, it's a little less forgiving, but look at this. It still carried 286, rolled 311. That's something in play. So from a forgiveness standpoint, I would say it is slightly less forgiving than the GT2, but I think any one of us would still take that as a miss hit. There we go, back to the screws. I mean, it's hard to describe this driver without constantly just saying good. It feels good, it sounds good. The data is good. I'm trying to look for some things to kind of knock it on. And for me, I would just say like visually, it's not the most visually appealing driver. Like it's kind of boring, I think, kind of in my opinion. But a lot of people don't care what their clubs look like. I talked to so many of you in the comments section. They're like, I don't care what a club looks like. I would pick it solely based on data. So, you know, looks are personal. I guess the only thing that I'm really not thrilled with is the price. Golf is getting so much more expensive even in the last 5 years. I remember when Pro V1s were 50 bucks a dozen, and that was still really crazy. And for these to be $8.99 Canadian or $6.50 US, like it's not cheap and it's expensive, especially if you're just getting into the game now. It's probably super intimidating to see how expensive everything is. But I think if you were to shell out that type of cash, you're not gonna be getting a new driver every year. Whew. Okay, let's take a look at the data on the GT3 and then we'll compare it to the GT2. All right guys, let's compare that GT3 to the GT2. Here was my GT2, remember this dispersion, and GT3. So it got a lot tighter. So what changed? The club head speed, I was actually swinging it slightly slower with the GT3. Ball speed went up, spin came down, launch angle's about the same, carry went up, and total went up. Total went up 8 yards. I would attribute that to the lower spin. It's just getting a little bit more roll. Let's look at my dispersion here. See if I was closer to that green. So I had one outlier. Look how consistent all of these are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right within each other. These other 2 outliers, exact same distance. And I had one bigger mishit. Remember we were talking about that really high spinner that was low on the face? So from a forgiveness standpoint, not as forgiving, I would say, as the GT2. Let's look at the GT2. I didn't have one outlier, right? Everything was pretty close to the same plane line. But this one guy will just show the forgiveness level. But to be 9 out of 10, like right on the money, we delete this guy and this looks even more impressive. So comparing the GT3 to the 2, I would say the 3 is a better club for me. Felt good, looked good. The last one we have to test is the GT4. In my years past, the 4 model, the TSI4, the TSR4 has always been the hardest for me to hit. So let's see what my session's like with the GT4. This is 430 cc's. This is built for the lowest spin and kind of a penetrating flight. Some new tech I haven't talked about yet is the new speed ring.
Whoop-de-doo! What does it all mean, Basil?
Basically, the speed ring is a ring behind the face that's supposed to help with off-center hits. You're not gonna hit it dead center every time, so if you catch it a little heely, toe, low, high on the face, it should still be relatively forgiving. It definitely looks smaller looking down at it at address. It almost makes the shaft look longer. I've just never really played a smaller head, so let's see what we can get out of this. Yeah, this one definitely already sounds different. Explaining sound is so tough to do. This one sounds almost like more like tinny. The other 2 were more compact, like a good little punch, where this one just maybe a little higher pitched. This GT4 doesn't have that movable CG weight track, but there are 2 weights. There's a face weight and a heel weight. You can flip-flop those if you want to get the ball higher in the air. Or I think on the Titleist website, you can actually buy different weights if you want to play around with the weight setting of this driver. That felt wide open. Yep. I used to think that the GT4 was just for like really like tour players or college players. And then I was on some Titleist forums and I saw a lot of guys that were like 16, 17 handicaps that were actually fit in the GT4. So that's why sometimes if you like just look at how they describe them on the website, click and buy, it might not necessarily be the best driver for you. So that's why getting fit is actually so worth it.
The swing is slower, which is weird.
Yeah, and that's why I was thinking about my timing being off. I think because it's a heavier head, I think I'm getting stuck with the club behind me. So I definitely noticed that I am swinging not as fast with this GT4. Now I'm gonna try to step on it because you said I'm swinging slow. All right, that's 10. Let's compare the GT4 to the other 2. Main takeaways from that session is the GT4, I think because it's the smaller head, just felt heavier. I feel like my timing was off a bit. It wasn't as forgiving. But sometimes you just don't get along with certain drivers, and for whatever reason, the 4s have never been my best hit driver. Dispersion there, compared to the 3 and the 2, it was still, that actually might have been tighter than the 2. Let's look at the averages. Average club head speed was 116, so I was swinging it slightly slower. Ball speed was down compared to the other 2. Spin was actually lower on the GT3. That's interesting. I wonder why that would have been. I'm thinking just because I had maybe more consistent hits with the GT3. The 4 was kind of all over the place. The 4, I actually had some of the lowest spin that I had. I think I had one that was like, is there 2000, 27, 28, 19. I don't think I had anything go below 2000 with the other ones. I had one outlier, 3200, that's probably keeping them high. But nothing I had below 2000 with the other 2 drivers. Let's take a look at my dispersion here. I think still relatively consistent, looking at the majority of these. 9 of them are on kind of the same line. I had, looks like 6 just right of the line. But comparing that to the GT3, for me, I think that was just a way better session. So I think each club head definitely has different characteristics. I think just looking at my tracers, based on the 3 that I hit, I would probably lean towards this guy, the GT3. With Titleist, for whatever reason, I've just always gone along with the 3 model drivers. I remember it in the TSI 3, I remember in the TSR 3. TSR 3, I think I had some of my fastest ball speed and club head speed ever. That's when I was swinging it, trying to absolutely murder the ball. I think I hurt my hip because of it, so I've definitely dialed it back a bit. I would say that these drivers are as advertised. The 2 is probably the most forgiving, kind of has the highest spin. The GT3 for me was right in like that mid players category. I think it was optimal performance and spin, maybe a little less forgiving than the GT2. And then the 4 was probably the least forgiving, but it, on some hits, it definitely had the lowest spin. Again, this is kind of just a preliminary first look. I'm really excited for the video that we're gonna do when we do a full fitting with Titleist to see how much we can improve on these first numbers. Thanks again for watching this video. We'll check in with you guys next time.